For the first time, Putin, Erdogan, Merkel and Macron, or the leaders of these four important countries, are meeting in Turkey to discuss the Syrian war. In the last couple of years, the European governments, and particularly Paris and Berlin, they were very stubborn in regards to Syria. They cut their relations, the diplomatic relations with Damascus, and they imposed sanctions on Syria based on false accusations, especially the massacre of Al-Hula, which was proved that it was committed by the so-called rebels in Syria. However, the European governments didn't back up from their decision, and they continue until this moment in their policy of sanctions and supporting the so-called opposition groups. Now they're still, for example, supporting and financing the White Helmets, which is considered the propaganda wing of Al-Qaeda in Syria. Anyways, now these four leaders are meeting today met actually in Turkey, and they discussed the Syrian situation, in particular the Idlib, because it's the last enclave of the so-called rebels or the terrorists in Syria, and the Syrian government gave a chance for diplomacy or diplomatic talk to solve this situation. We all remember that the Syrian army mobilized its forces and they were ready to go in and liberate, but there was a high military and diplomatic and political pressure, not only on Syria but also on Russia. And Syria and its allies, they thought that they could give a chance for diplomacy once again. So now these powers are discussing the Idlib situation. They are trying to solve the issue diplomatically, although in my opinion it's very difficult, especially that Al-Qaeda or Jabhat al-Nusra, or now what is called Hayat Tahrir al-Sham, they are the strongest force in Idlib. They refused to abide by the Idlib deal, which calls for a demilitarized zone 20 kilometers surrounding Idlib, and also to take over the heavy weaponry from the radical groups. I mean, the radical groups, especially the foreign terrorists, they are the strongest force there, and they are ready to fight till the end. So let's see how this will be solved. But what are the interests of these European governments, especially Germany and France? Germany and France, they are concerned that if there will be a military operation in Idlib, thousands of refugees will go to Turkey, and from Turkey eventually to Europe. And among these so-called refugees, there would be hundreds of radical elements, including fighters, radical jihadists, and maybe even multinational terrorists. So this concern imposed on them to go to Turkey and to talk directly with Russia, which is the mediator in this regard, and Turkey, which is also part of the Astana process. They are talking about the Astana and the Sochi processes, which had tangible results on the ground. But what interesting is the absence of the United States from this meeting. Some say that Turkey and Russia sidelined Washington. This is partially true. However, Trump, the CIA and Pentagon, they still have a say in Syria, and they have troops on the ground and also proxy forces, especially the so-called Syrian Democratic Forces, which is mainly consists of the Kurdish militias, the separatists from the Kurds. So sidelining USA could lead to another escalation from the American side, and they could go more stubborn and they could complicate the situation in Syria. We all know how the Americans act in the region. They are like a bulldog in Syria, and the party that has been most damaged by the American presence in Syria is the Syrian army and the Syrian government, and the Americans bombed the Syrian army several times while they were trying to liberate certain areas from ISIS, Daesh. But the question remains here. I'm reading some of the comments from analysts saying that how far or to what extent Paris and Berlin are independent when it comes to foreign policy. This is a very important question. And to what extent they are ready to cooperate not only with Russia, but also with Syria. We all know that Russia is representing also the Syrian interests in these meetings. So Syria and also Iran are not absent from this meeting. Actually, they're both there through the Russian mediator, and all the talking points, the discussions and the results will be shared with Damascus. So today there could be this meeting between these four powers. Tomorrow, in the near future, or after maybe next year, there could be another meeting, and this time Damascus could be present by a delegation, and also Tehran could be present by a delegation. So all parties involved in this crisis should sit on one table. In 2011, 12, 13, when there was this Geneva process, it's still there, but it's paralyzed actually. The UN was bringing this so-called opposition to sit with the Syrian government, and the Syrian government was saying, please bring us their masters. Bring the US, bring France, bring Britain, bring Germany, bring those who are behind this so-called opposition. And the Syrian government was right, because they knew that these opposition groups are not independent, and their decision is actually strongly bounded to the interests of the US and its allies. So today we are on the right path when these powers are meeting together, but in my opinion, the European governments, and especially Germany, because Germany received the most refugees from Syria, they should have a direct contact and discussions with the Syrian government. There should be discussions over those who want to voluntarily go back to Syria, and especially that President Assad now pardoned and issued a general pardon for all the military deserters and those who escaped from the Syrian army. If they want to go back to Syria, it's no more. There would be no security problems for them. So those who want to go, let them go, and those who doesn't want to go, they can stay. But at the end, Syria needs manpower to rebuild. The other point is Germany and France should stop this diplomatic boycott and economic sanctions. I mean, we are at the end of 2018, and the war is almost over, and Syria wants to reconstruct itself. And it's not possible to reconstruct while there is a huge embargo and sanctions against Syria, and transactions are not possible. The materials that are needed for reconstruction is not possible. Look, you could argue that Russia, China, India, Pakistan, they will have a role in reconstruction, and I believe they will have the biggest role in reconstructing Syria. But international isolation of Syria should be over. Syria didn't harm France, didn't harm Germany. It was actually these governments who supported this so-called opposition in Syria to overthrow a legitimate government there. So it's the other side that should initiate this, not the Syrian side. Syria is doing everything possible to by giving pardons, by easing the laws for those who were against the government to return back. And there are thousands of former rebels. They are now fighting with the Syrian army after reconciling with the Syrian government. So all this talk about that if you reconcile with the Syrian government, they will send you to jail, it's an utter bullshit. And there could be few examples of those who reconciled and they are now in jail because of what they committed after reconciliation. Reconciliation doesn't mean that you are free to do anything you want. There is a law and there are regulations, and if you commit a crime when you reconcile, everything you did before reconciliation, the government is pardoning you, but if you do something after reconciliation, you would go to jail. This is 101 of any criminal law anywhere in the world. And since I talked about the refugees, I would like to express my deepest solidarity, and I'm very ashamed of what 7 Syrian animals did to, even animals don't do this, they are worse than animals actually. And one Syrian man in the city of Freiburg in the federal state of Baden-Württemberg, he put something like a drugs in the drink of a German lady. He took her out from the club, he raped her. He called his friends, 6 other Syrian friends. They all came and raped her. And there was another guy also, he has a German nationality, but he's not of German origins, as far as I know. He also raped her. This kind of crimes I've been in Germany since 3 years, and I haven't heard such crimes when I was in Syria. And since I came to Germany, almost every month there is a similar incident, horrible, horrible crime. Some of my German friends are asking me, is this something normal that happens all the time in Syria? No, it's not. And from Syrian analysis, from this platform, I urge the German journalists to investigate the background of these people and to see, to make sure that the vast majority of these people are one of those anti-government activists or criminals or these militants who are fighting against Syria. These people they failed to integrate in the Syrian society because the Syrian society was more and more becoming more liberal and less conservative. And this boom that happened in Syria, one of the reasons why was that these people were not able to integrate, and now they are in Germany. So are you expecting these people who failed to integrate in Syria, they would integrate in Germany? There is no word that can describe my feelings because I am a regular visitor of Freiburg, and when I'm there, I love this city a lot. It's maybe the only place in Germany that I feel home. And but when I go to the clubs, for example, at nights in Freiburg, they are no more accepting Syrians. They just check your ID and see that you are from Syria, and they don't allow you in because they had bad experience with some Syrians. And this is, it hurts me, but I understand their position, but there should be a solution for this. This is not possible. A collective punishment for all Syrians because they are from Syria is not a solution, but at the same time, there should be a policy by the German government to force the people to integrate. If they fail in their integration process in a certain period of time, they should send them back. I don't know. These people are hurting us in Syria, in Germany as well. Our reputation is also damaged, and we're also suffering because of these people. So from Syrian analysis, I strongly condemn this horrible crime, and I call upon the German authorities to punish these people in the strongest way possible. If there is, they should apply the laws that could send these people to the maximum amount of time in jail, and maybe even worse.